Hello. Today we're going to go ahead and create a new Spring Boot project using IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate Edition. So I've got IntelliJ Ultimate Edition opened up right here on my screen. We're going to select Create New Project and then go to Spring Initializer, selecting our default project SDK. Just today, the Java 1.9 came out, but I'm using 1.8 since it's stable. So going forward, we're going to choose a project metadata, com.udemy demo Spring Boot. This will be a demo project for Spring Boot using a Maven project, Java. It's going to compile the packaging to a jar. We have the option to compile to a WAR as well. A WAR is commonly used with Tomcat or Jetty or other server containers. Since we'd like ours to be self-contained, we're going to leave it as jar. Additionally, we could choose languages, Java, Kotlin, or Groovy. As of Spring 4, we don't have the ability to use Kotlin as a first-class language, though that will be changing next week when Spring 5 comes out with Spring 2.x for the Spring Boot. Java version is 1.8. We're going to call our version 1.0 instead of the default here. So hitting next, we get given our dependency options. In our dependency options, we have a lot of options here for security and dev tools. I'm going to choose web since we're doing some web endpoints and leave it at that for now. So we're going to hit next. It's going to confirm to us our project name and our location, which I'm fine with. Hit finish. And we're brought to the screen showing us exactly what project we're going to make. So now that we come here, we see an IDEA folder, that's our project folder, a .mvn folder, that's from Maven, a source folder holding our files, it's initialized a Git repository for us, and even a POM. The pom.xml file is where we hold all of our dependencies. So looking at our dependencies now, we have Spring Framework Boot with the Spring Starter parent. We have Spring Framework Boot with the Starter Web. We have Spring Boot with the Starter Test. And we have the Spring Maven plugin. You might recognize the web that we actually used in the wizard. So that's there now, and we're going to go over to the source folder. To main, Java, we'll expand resources as well, and we see an application.properties file and a demo Spring Boot application file. We're going to choose application.properties. Here, this is where we can set all of the settings we'd like to set that are going to be external to the application but give us the configuration properties. So these are things that won't show up inside of the code so we reverse engineer it. So if we go server.port equals 9001, then we can pick the server the port we'd like to use. Default is 8080. So that's one thing we could do. We're going to leave it at 8080 for now. Coming over here to the Spring Boot, we're going to right click and choose New Package. Going to create a new controller. Right click on the package, choose a new Java class, and call it Main Controller. This will create a typical Java class like you're probably used to seeing. From here, we're going to start to do the real magic of Spring. So the steps we're going to do are going to include creating a Spring controller and then a request mapping, which will hold the function that allows us to map an endpoint, and then finally a JSON endpoint, JSON object, which will allow for us to return some JSON back. So coming here, we're going to do @controller. And we see it fills in for us the org.springframework.stereotype for a controller. All the controller means is that this is a class which feeds us some endpoints. So now we have a controller. We're going to do another annotation, request mapping, and we're going to give it a value. And it automatically fills us in the default is empty. We're going to tell it the value is going to be just the /. Going to give it another annotation, response body, which tells Spring that we are using JSON as our return type. And we're going to pass in Spring index, and then we're going to create a JSON object, which it's not going to find at first because we've not imported a JSON library. But JSON object return obj equals new JSON object. And if we hover over the object and we were to click Alt and click, or right click over it, then we're able to find options for it. Alt and enter. I'm sorry, I'm used to using Mac and I'm doing a Windows on this machine. So if we go to Add Maven Dependency, we find a number of dependencies that we can choose from. I'm not finding the dependency I want to use. I would like to use the json.org dependency. So coming here, I see the Jetty, the Spring Boot, the DataBind, and the other Spring Boot. So I'm going to go up to Google and find the dependency which I'm looking for. That's going to be at the mvnrepository.com. MVN repository is where we find many Maven plugins. If we put in JSON, then we find the first result is JSON in Java. So we're going to click on that. It will show us all of the central repositories and then the experimental repositories or ones that people have brought forth through open source contributions. We're going to choose the most recent central version. When we click in the box for Maven, it highlights it for us, which we can then Control-C into our clipboard, come back to IntelliJ, and now go to our pom.xml file and include a dependency. So by pasting this dependency in, we go back here. Now we have included the org.json dependency, and we've been asked if we'd like to import the changes from Maven. We're going to choose Enable Auto Import so that it auto imports our changes whenever we make a change, because we'll do this quite often. So now if we go back to our controller, then we will find that we can actually import this JSON object if we hit Alt-Enter. And it chooses the org.json JSON object. To close out this lesson, we're going to actually add something to the JSON object by going returnObj.put, seeing all the possible values, a string key, int, long, double, boolean, maps, etc. that we can put into a JSON object. For a good lesson on JSON, I suggest you check out w3schools.com as they have a lot of good lessons. For now, we're going to put a string in. The string will have the key hello and the value world. And we're going to return the returnObj dot to string. And with this, we can now go forward and hit play, and our run configuration is already made for us with them setting it up already. So hitting play will launch the Spring Boot starter, as we can see down here in our console window. Started Spring Boot in 4.1 seconds. If we go back to our browser, we can go to localhost 8080 and see our endpoint. Hello world. So that's going to conclude this lesson. In the next lesson, I'll show you how to do some more detailed things with endpoints. I hope you enjoyed the lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.